listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Good afternoon, Dolphins. How is you guys doing? Jason Sarney here with my buddy Zach Krantz with a new show, Lunch with Krantz and Sarney here on DolphinsTalk.com. Before anything, Zach, how you doing?
Doing great, Jason. This is going to be fun. I'm excited to get this started, especially before preseason game number 1. Be with you all season long, off-season wise. Me and Sarney have great conversations about the Dolphins throughout the season. Now we get to share those private conversations with the world at this point. So I'm excited. I'm good. And it's during lunch, one of my favorite times of the day. So if Jason's okay with it, probably every week I'm going to have some sort of different sandwich here or some sort of bagel from my favorite bagel place here. And you're probably not going to be able to hear all my words because I'll be gargling while eating the sandwich. But we'll have a good time here. It's lunch. It's Thursday. We're almost at the weekend. We're almost at preseason game number 1. Jason, I'm jacked up, and I haven't even had my 5-hour energy.
I love it. I got my turkey sandwich and mustard to my left. I got my Coca-Cola on ice to my right. And thank you for everyone joining us in the chat. You have a question for us, throw it on in there. We'll get to it. But before anything, I'm here in the Northeast near Philly. You are boots on the ground, home in Florida, in South Florida. Why don't you give a word for our sponsor, Caneswear, down there?
One of my favorite places right by the house here in Davie. Caneswear, the place to go for all your officially licensed apparel for the Miami Dolphins, the Heat, the Hurricanes, the Panthers, all of the professional and college teams in South Florida as well. And if you need the latest jersey, maybe that birthday gift, maybe that gift, for the holidays, doesn't matter. The newest hat to hit the market, they're going to have it there. Any of your South Florida favorite teams, the apparel is going to be there. Check out Caneswear for all their overwhelming selection of sports apparel. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. 2655 South University Drive in Davie. Caneswear has it all. And if you're not in South Florida, like Jason or anyone else out there, no worries at all. Caneswear.com, great website, easy to use. Shop all their inventory from the comfort of your own home. They'll ship it to you. International fans also, you're good to go to. Go to Caneswear.com. The spot for Miami fans where they're going to shop, Caneswear.com. That's Caneswear.com, one of my favorite websites.
I sent you that 45 seconds ago, and you just nailed it. And basically, you know what? I hand it off to you. You rock and roll with it, and that's how we're going to do it. So let's get going and appreciate it. We got over 100 people already rocking. Raul, thank you for saying my name with exclamation points. I love that. Instead of question marks, it says that you're one of my peeps. I love it. But let's talk about training camps. Zach, you've been there. You're our guy with eyes, ears. A lot of us up in the Northeast, West Coast, middle of the country, different countries, cover this team, love this team. But you are right in the thick of it. What have you heard from the week that was with joint practice with the Falcons?
Well, I'll tell you the one thing that, because there's been plenty of stuff that we can go over and we will, but the one thing I love, and we even talked about it on our own roundtable and stuff like that during the week, I love the way that Anthony Weaver's defense is going to look. I really do. I have a feeling, and you know what the best part is? We haven't seen anything yet. No matter what we've seen at camp, no matter what reporters out there reporting, you really haven't seen anything yet. The joint practices are fun because it's obviously someone else you get to fight with, and obviously there's been a couple scuffles, whatever we want to call it out there. But the fact that Jaylen Ramsey is playing that chess piece, he's playing that position of wherever he needs to be on the field. And the fact that we might see Kendall Fuller do it and Javon Holland do it and guys like that. And then, of course, we talked about it in the offseason. We talked about it since Wilkins left. What's the defensive line going to look like? I'm telling you right now, they signed, 8, 9, 10,000 guys to replace Christian Wilkins, as we always talk about. That's plenty fine. We need bodies there, obviously. We'll see what happens. I'm excited to see what Calais Campbell's going to do there in the middle also and what kind of leader he'll be on defense there. But I'm telling you, the one thing to me that just is exciting to see in person, and not during camp, but when that first game comes around and you know kind of what's going to end up happening. It's that use of Jalen Ramsey. We didn't trade all that and pay him all that money to bring him down here to be a guy that doesn't do anything for this team. I know the whole Deion Sanders thing back in the day. He never saw the ball on his side of the field because they were scared to throw it. That's fine. But if Ramsey can be moved around and that defense can be moved around and we see something different, I'm excited by that as well. And of course, offensive side of the ball, I love to see Tua throw the ball downfield with such precision to Tyreek Hill or Jaylen Waddle, or I know Sarney's guy, River Craycraft. I love that. I love to see that because I know I'm going to see it during the season, and I know it's real. It's not just preseason camp, throw the ball downfield. No, folks, Dolphin fans, you know this already. You're going to see it all season long. So I'm excited. When that starts to happen in camp, the first 2 days of camp, of course, we had the Tua situation until it got fixed. That's behind us. We don't need to talk about that. We're all happy or not happy, the 50-50 squad out there for Tua out there. But I'm excited to see this team. I think the expectations for this team are a little bit low because of who they lost on defense, and that's fine. That offense is better than it was last year outside of the offensive line, which I know is going to be a hot topic all season long until they prove us all wrong. But I'm excited to see the offense put up points and do what they have to do, and I'm excited to see Anthony Weaver's defense, to see what I haven't seen and what I'm going to see at this point. So, yeah, it's fun. And listen, camp's camp. You're not going to get it all. You're not going to see it all. Best part about camp, I think, is walking around and seeing everybody, seeing all the people you haven't seen in a couple months, and you get to do that and sit with them and watch some football. So we're in camp season. We're in pad season. We're in a joint practice season. It's a lot of fun. And, of course, during joint practices, what you're going to see for the first time in a week, them being able to hit someone else instead of their own teammates. And that's why we have fights all over the country in every one of these joint practices.
Fantastic appetizer. And to keep to this lunch theme, and this is a good dish, but this is also a negative connotation. We've got a little bit of a matzo ball right now at the offensive line, if you will. 6193 ASNF, pardon my eyesight. Is Grier allergic to building the offensive line? This is third year under Mike, and the O-line still an issue. Now, before I kick it to you with your knowledge of the folks down there who are covering certain guys individual, I'm saying the beat writers, respect to the beat writers, respect to everyone down there. They see it. If I'm interpreting, wow, got that out finally.
Easy for you to say, right?
Exactly. It's lunchtime, mouthful. But we have Butch Barry, who was able to use about 12 combinations of 5. Right? And it worked, but almost to the point where there were certain times where it didn't work. And that was like short yardage where you needed a yard running up the middle, consistency on the road, elongated plays where Tua has to make something happen after Tyreek or Waddle that read. So, very limited time to throw, which fits Tua. But what are there, glaring issues that are unfixable with this group and the coach, or how do you see it?
I'll tell you what, the most glaring thing right now is to find out exactly if Aaron Brewer's okay or not, and to make sure that he is all right. I mean, we're not going to get a full kind of answer from the coaching staff. We're not going to get any of that stuff. We're not going to get anything from Aaron. If he's okay, I'll feel a lot better, because that's another guy down, and it's a guy you picked up, and it's a guy that you brought in to fill that Connor Williams spot that now he's off somewhere to Seattle, wherever the heck he signed. I don't even remember at this point. The glaring needs, the middle of the offensive line towards the right. If Robert Jones can play right guard, that's fine. He's a good run blocker. Pass blocking, we'll see. Austin Jackson, I think at this point I'm done ripping him. He's gotten his extension. He's played pretty good. Last year he played really good for the first time in a couple of years here with this Dolphins team, so I'm okay there. The center position, it's Eichenberg. If Brewer's gone, it's going to be Eichenberg. And then you got to worry about the left guard spot too. And then you got to worry if Teron Armstead's going to be available all season long. There's a lot of variables there. But if Teron Armstead gives you, I don't know what the right number to throw out here is. If he gives you 12 games, if he gives you 13 games, I know that's an unreasonable small amount of number of games for a superstar player. Then at that point, you have to worry about what's going to happen there. Kendall Lamb could be a good fill in there for a little bit, and that's fine. But if we see Kendall Lamb playing left tackle for 6 or 7 games this season, that's a problem because Armstead's your best offensive lineman. So is there glaring needs? I think that there could be if injuries start to pile up because the depth there is not great. If you had a really good starting five, which only 4 or 5 teams in the NFL really do. Right. So it's not like I'm talking about the Dolphins are the only team not to have a good offensive line. There's plenty of teams around the league that have 2 good offensive linemen and 3, like hopefully they work out kind of guys. And maybe that's the Dolphins. 2 guys that are good and 3, hopefully it works out okay. They're not the Eagles. They're not the Lions where you have 5 possible Pro Bowlers on your offensive line. That's fine. They stay relatively healthy. Armstead stays relatively healthy. I think this is going to be more of us being more worried than we should be towards the end of the season. A couple injuries pile up during camp, which obviously it started with Brewer here. Yeah, then I can understand the concern there because like 6193 ANSF says, is he allergic to building, Grier allergic to building the offensive line? That is a topic of conversation every single week on the Krantz Corner Dolphins Roundtable that Jason Sarney's on. We talk about it every single week. We've talked about it for months during the offseason. We talked about it at the beginning of last season when we did roundtables, when Chris Grier and company told us not to worry because they're not worried about the offensive line. Well, I'm sort of worried about the offensive line. So hopefully the injuries don't pile up, and if they stay relatively healthy, fingers crossed, then maybe it's something we're just blowing out of proportion before camp and not really knowing what's going on. Injuries pile up. Chris Grier is going to look like he did everything good in the offseason by trying to replace Wilkins and getting back on defense, players on defense that could fit Weaver's scheme. Offensively, they upgraded a couple positions, as long as Odell Beckham is not out longer than we all think at this point. But that offensive line, what did he do besides sign Aaron Brewer? Brought in the rest of the guys back and kind of copied and pasted and see what happened. You lost Hunt, you lost Williams. Those are 2 big losses in the offensive line. Let's just hope they stay afloat and stay relatively healthy, gain experience together, because we all know offensive line more than any other spots on this team need to be together during camp to work together, to understand each other, arm movements and the tap on the shoulder if you see something, or screaming to the right guard from the left tackle position what you see. You need that consistency. That's the only thing right now that bothers me about this team. I think the rest of the team right now is going to be a little bit better than we all thought.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And if we just want to stick with the offensive line for just another minute, credit to drafting Patrick Paul in the 2nd round, who let's call a project and guy in waiting to a Teron Armstead. And you mentioned Kendall Lamb. All due respect, really a good player, a journeyman. This is his last year. It's a swan song. He said it. This is my final year. Right. So you know what? As a swing tackle, awesome. Love it. But I think by week 5, 6, 7, if this is like, all right, we're doing well, Teron, we might have a healthy scratch here, I would love to see Patrick Paul beat out Kendall Lamb from, obviously right now it's Kendall Lamb and Patrick Paul is behind him. But do you think that there's a chance from your, being down there, any shot at the moment of the rookie beating out the veteran?
I think he's a project. I think he's a guy that's going to take half the season to get really acclimated to everything in the NFL. It's one thing from college football to pro football and the speed difference when you're the quarterback or a safety, cornerback, something like that. Offensive line is dealing with a totally different animal. I know it's the same position he's played for years. He's played left tackle. He's played that position. I get it. You get into the NFL, it's a little bit different because every single week, that 1 week you had in college when you played against that superstar, right end, it's every week in the NFL when that happens. It's 1 week you play the Jets, and 1 week you play the Bills, and 1 week you play the Patriots, and different schemes and different star players. He just needs to get acclimated to that. I would love to see Patrick Paul by the end of camp rave reviews from Butch Berry and the coaches, how much improvement he's made since day one. He kind of gets it. We're excited to give him some time, but we're excited to also let him sit the year and learn a little bit more. If we have to see Patrick Paul play, that's obviously because Lamb and Arm said something has happened and not happened good, and he's got to be put in there. I'd like to see that maybe towards the end of the season when there's a little bit of time. And Armstead, like you said, that healthy scratch, maybe they're in playoff position. Not that they are okay with losing that game that week, but they're okay with trying something because things are working good and everyone's relatively healthy, because no one's ever healthy in the NFL. No one's at 100% when camp starts. Nevertheless, week 16, 17, 18 at this point, there's just no chance unless you've been on IR all year and you're coming back. which we might see that with a couple Dolphin players. But if Patrick Paul has to play, I think things went in the wrong direction if it's early in the season. Late in the season, maybe he showed the coaches at that point he could play. He could be a starter in this league. This was a good pick. Let's see what could happen. Because next year at this time when we're having this conversation, it's going to be Patrick Paul's position more than likely. If Armstead retires and Lamb's not there, you're going to move Austin Jackson back to left tackle? Probably not at that point. It's going to be Paul's position to lose, I think, unless they draft another guy high in that first round, that tackle position. So I hope to see him play, but I also hope to not see him play at some point.
I like that answer. I mean, obviously, if Teron Armstead can play all the way through and it's like a week 16, 17 situation rest with everything locked up, godsend. We'll see what happens. Cap for life. Shout out to you, my dude. Obviously, Liam Eichenberg, everyone has seen the poor play. Everyone has seen some sparks of decent play. To his credit, he has played every position on the offensive line, which you can say, jack of all trades, master of none. Jeff Dellenbach, that's what he was pretty much known for. He played them all. So give him one last chance to master that. Maybe the center position if Aaron Brewer, unfortunately, is hurt for an extended period of time. But moving off the offensive line, which they need to fix. They brought in Sean Harlow, free agent journeyman, guard center guard, whatever. But we'll see. We'll see. So going to kick it over to the quarterback situation. The QB2, Mike White for Skylar Thompson. What have you heard as I take a little Coca-Cola break here?
Right. Well, nothing great from, either. No one's had like a camp that's like, wow, look at this guy. He's come out of nowhere. One of those guys, I think Sarney said it. I don't think one of those guys is going to be on the team. I think whoever gets that second spot is going to be there, and whoever is that third guy might not be there. And it depends, because if Mike White does beat out Skylar's probably a practice squad guy, or maybe, but at that point, someone might pick him up to be a backup somewhere or a third string on a team. You never know. I hope Skylar Thompson beats out Mike White. Mike White's the local kid too. Mike White, the university school is about a mile and a half down the street. This is a local kid. I was rooting hard for him. But at this point, if Skylar Thompson and him are equal, close, and there might be a little bit more upside with Skylar, because he's younger, I keep Skylar. I get rid of Mike White, save a little bit of money. I don't know who was quoted on that on the round table last night. It could have been Sarney. It could have been Mike. But I like that idea at that point, that if it's close enough and it's not, Mike White by a mile over Skylar, I think you got to give the edge to Skylar at this point. I haven't heard too much about this competition, which is only because probably it's the Tua situation and everyone's just talking about Tua. But I think after this week 1 preseason game, that's going to be one of the hot topics down here in South Florida for this Dolphins team, is that number 2 quarterback position. I think everyone's worried about what was going to happen with Tua, how's the offensive line going to look, and who's going to replace and how that defensive line is going to be replaced after Wilkins is gone. That's kind of the opening training camp questions. I think now that we move past that first game, which is coming up here in a day, then it's okay. Tua's got his contract he's taken care of. Defensive line doesn't look as bad as we all thought it might look. You never know. They're not playing in games yet, so that's one thing. Offensive line is still the question mark. We need to make sure that everything's okay and healthy. And then it's going to be, all right, what's the new hot topic? Who gets that number 2 spot behind Tua? Because that's a very important spot to have on this team. You're not putting any schlep at a number 2 spot. You got to put someone that if it comes down to it and you have to get in the game and something does, knock on wood, hopefully not, happen to Tua where he misses a game or 2 or 3 or more, you need to have a capable backup in there. It's going to depend on who runs the system better in Mike McDaniel's eyes. I trust him at this point to come back and tell Chris Grier and staff, it's close. I think Skylar's going to win it. What do we do at this point? And then I think Chris Grier's got a decision he's got to make with the rest of his staff. Is it worth keeping him around for a couple $1 million a year, or do we save that money off the cap and get him out of here? It's going to be an interesting situation, and I think that's something in the next 10 days that's going to be, if not the hottest topic, it's going to be right up there at number 2.
They say tie goes to the runner, right, Zach? Well, tie goes to the dollar. I mean, if you're looking at the same product, and we're talking name brand versus imitation brand, but it tastes the same, it looks the same, it feels the same, made from the same stuff, but one's going to cost me a fraction, and I could use that to get other goods, or at least put that in my chest and Warhopper for later. This is like academic. This is like academic. In all due respect to Mike White, things happen in the world of the NFL where a guy could pack up his bags and his agent can say, wait.
Right.
I'm sending you here. Don't get too comfortable yet. You're going to do this or that or the other thing. So, it's the business. It is what it is. I've really lost my, for lack of a better term, sympathy. It is what it is.
Right.
It's a business. You get cut, you find your way somewhere else. Their jerseys, they get taken off and put on with another color. It's totally fine.
That's it.
So
I saw it firsthand. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, please go ahead, please.
I have a very good relationship. One of my very good friends is Channing Crowder. I was at Channing Crowder's last practice with the Dolphins. His wife was pregnant with the first kid. They've got 3 kids, so it's been a long time since that happened. Fully pregnant, sitting in the stands in the family section. And I went and sat as a media guy with Asia, his wife, and we sat there. Waiting for practice to end. He came over, obviously, to say hi to his wife and his 2 buddies, and then me. Pads are kind of coming off the whole deal. He looks at me and goes, I'm due a bonus tonight at midnight. I think it was $2.5 or $3.5 million bonus on his contract. He goes, I'm never going to see it. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you'll be in practice tomorrow. He goes, guarantee I get cut tonight by 6 p.m. when the waiver wire hits. Let's see. 5 o'clock, waiver wire comes out. Channing Crowder was released. That was the last down in anything he played for the Miami Dolphins. He saw it coming a mile away. It was one of the craziest stories ever because I was freaking out thinking this might happen. Nah, it's not going to happen. Oh, my God, what if it does happen? He's my friend. What do you say to someone who knows they're due $3.5 million? The lottery's going to hit tonight at midnight, but you're not going to make it to that lottery. I understood at that point, and before that the NFL is a business. We all know that to a point. We don't want to think about it all the time, but it is. That day is when it actually hit me, and it had nothing to do with me personally outside of someone I knew. The roster bonus they weren't going to see because it was a business and they don't want to pay him that. And that's going to end up happening with a lot of guys around the league. And it has happened for decades since all the money, big money, has come into the NFL. So I've seen it. I know the business of the NFL, and anyone who's out there who's a big fan knows it also. You see it at that point. Could be one of your favorite players, and then all of a sudden the next day on the waiver wire cut for the team. And this is the time when it happens, right during training camp.
It is a business. That's a great story, and I appreciate you sharing that. And shout out to Channing Crowder, who is one of my all-time favorite Dolphins. He's one of those lifer Dolphins, right, where that's all he wore. And of course, thank goodness. Of course, you know what? The funny thing is, and I mean this with all due respect, and this happens, sometimes in sports, as good as he was a player, he is a better person and personality down in South Florida, and I just love all the things that he does. So shout out to you, CC. And going on to the rest of what we're looking for, I guess, really throughout this week and tomorrow is some competitions. And wide receiver, we're fortunate as Dolphin fans to be the best top-heavy team in the league at the 1-2. Listen, folks, it's straight academic. We got the number 1 player voted on the fans in the world, so by logic, he's the number 1 receiver. And for my money, there's no better number 2 wide receiver on a team than Jaylen Waddle. So by definition, it's the best wide receiver tandem in the league. Now, it brings me to the number 3 wide receiver. We signed Odell Beckham Jr. Excellent. But what he's been doing on the PUP at the moment is basically just doing half wind sprint, full jogs, whatever you want to call it. So let's put a wild card asterisk on the amount of snaps that he's going to see. We're looking for consistency. You mentioned the River Craycraft. Really, nothing's more consistency than the flow of water here, really, right? And, River is all he is as consistent as can be. On All Dolphins coming up later today, I have a piece, Alan Papard, shout out to you. Appreciate you giving me a platform for articles here and there. There's a piece on River Craycraft coming up. Journeyman found his way in San Francisco, and he has a quote that's in the article, and I'll paraphrase, he makes himself bigger by blocking, knowing the scheme, doing his job. And his catch rate over the course of his career is fantastic. It's like 70%. Right. So when called upon, he gets every bit of opportunity. And I'll tell you, like 90% of his catches go for a first down. So what are your thoughts about River Craycraft? Because he is listed behind Jaylen Waddle on the depth chart. So by worst, that's wide receiver 4.
Yeah, I like River Craycraft. He's been consistent since he's been here. I think that he could catch the big ball when he's going to be single covered. If he's in the game, zero shot he's being double covered because of what's around him. And at that point, that makes him dangerous because if he is a good number 3 or if Odell's back, a good number 4, if they go to that stretch, I like it. I like it there. It doesn't almost, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, but it almost doesn't matter what you have back at that. If Odell's were penciling in a 3, that 4 and 5 spot, as long as they could stay consistent and healthy. If it ends up being Odell at the 3, Craycraft at the 4, and even Braxton at the 5 at that point, I'm feeling very confident about my wide receiver core this year for the Miami Dolphins. Of course, like you said, because you're so top heavy and the most top heavy team, one of the 4 or 5 or 6 teams in the league that they're not worried about that position whatsoever. And we're lucky to be in that spot because, like you said, you got 2 of the top 12 probably receivers in the league, 13, if wherever you want to put Waddle on that full list of all the guys around the league, top 15, whatever it is. When you get 2 of the top 15 at any position that you play multiple guys at, you're good. And the guys at 3, 4, and 5, they're going to eat if they come in the game and see that. So you need a guy that you could count on to catch that pass, that slant, that 12-yard out when it's 3rd and 12 and you know that Tyreek's going to get double teamed and they're going to bring the safety over Waddle because they don't want those guys to beat them. And maybe Jonnu Smith being covered by who knows at that point. If it ends up where Odell's not starting the season with this team and he's on PUP or he's playing here or whatever the case is, and I don't even know at this point with him, I'm good calling River Craycraft the number 3 receiver on this team. And I think because of the fact he's been so consistent since he's been here, a guy that you hear about in practice, you hear about from the reporters, another great grab today, 3 for 3 catching in whatever the case may be. That makes me happy to know that that position is so solidified that you almost don't have to worry about it outside of injuries. Odell, this would have been the perfect situation if Odell's in full, awesome shape and out there every day and you're 1, 2, 3. Because then at this point, it doesn't matter who's at 4, 5, and 6 if you're going to keep 6 or 7 because of the whole special teams thing at this point. I'm good. If River Craycraft tomorrow was the start of the season, game 1, and River was the 3 guy, I'm feeling confident.
With you there. I mean, absolute confidence, and the confidence is with McDaniel. Remember, Mike McDaniel, offensive coordinator in San Francisco, run game coordinator prior to that a few years. He knows River. That's why he's here. The simplicity of that system to do everything without even getting the ball. Tyreek Hill even endorses him. That River is his wide receiver 1 in that fun yearly wide receiver draft that they do for a meal, I believe it is. But River is he's the guy. He's like almost like the Dennis Rodman where he just does everything else and Michael and Scotty do everything else. So that being said, I want to keep my eye on 2 wide receivers tomorrow night. 1 for Dolphins' sake, 2 for a sake that I hope that his career continues to elevate. And I'll start with that one. That's Braylon Sanders, who has been on the practice squad. But from what I saw a couple of days ago at practice, he just caught everything. He was catching everything. I didn't know where I wanted to go with that one, but he was unfathomable to me. I was like, this guy's on the practice squad. He could be a 5 or a 6 anywhere else. I think maybe not on the Dolphins roster. I don't know that he has much time on the practice squad. I think this might be kind of, whatever. Right. But previous, I mentioned another one, a rookie, Malik Washington. I think you mentioned kickoffs.
Right.
Sometimes rookie wide receivers could really make their bones as a return man, whether it be punt returner or kick returner, while Braxton Berrios, I think, has that punt returner job to lose right now. There's 2 kickoff returners. It might still be Barrios on one side, but Malik Washington, he's 5'8", he's fast. He can get lost in the sea of blockers. If you catch a lateral or trick play or just let him go and he catches a block, he's gone. He's absolutely gone. And he played well in receiver duties, both on the outside, caught a 45-yard pass, against Siran Neal. He kind of lunged for it. I think it was from 2, actually, too.
Right.
And also, I think he could be a slot guy. I truly, truly do. So that's my 2 to look for specifically Friday night. Do you have a receiver, whether we named him, whether we didn't? Is there someone else trickling down the roster that you're interested in?
It's Malik.
Cool.
I think it is because I think you literally hit it spot on. Not only can he be let's just say the 5, if he's the 5 on the depth chart. But the special teams aspect of a guy like that, if he shows this team that he can be the guy returning kicks, backup punt returner, and he can catch the ball from 2 and be that 5 guy. If you're a 5-tool guy on a team with a loaded wide receiver core, you're going to make the team. If you're not just the guy catching the balls downfield, which you might have 4 or 5 of those guys, but you could do a couple other things also, that would be a good fit for him. I'm intrigued to see how they use him in this game Friday night, and I'm intrigued to see how they use him in the next couple of weeks to see where he fits in best for this team, because like you're not looking at this point. And one of the commenters, I think it's Fish Pilot, said Odell is here for December and on. He's probably right. Odell is here maybe for that kind of end of the season. So get to that point, and then, I mean, just imagine. And I think it was last year at a certain point too, when Jalen Ramsey came back, the defense was still like top 12 in the league before Jalen Ramsey was on the defense. Can you imagine adding to a top 5 offense another weapon later in the season, like Odell Beckham, who's healthy and feeling good? And by that time, the River Craycrafts of the world and the Braxton Berrioses and Malik Washington have gotten 10 games in where they've gotten into the system. They're fully in the system. They're feeling good in the system. Oh, and then, by the way, we're going to add another weapon that if you try to double team him, who you're not going to double team. You're not going to double team Waddle. You're not going to double team Tyreek Hill. You're going to leave Jonnu Smith in single coverage or put some awkward guy on him in the red zone. This has the potential to be another really, really fun season to see this offense play. And it's been years since we've had consistent years. It's been decades since you've had consistent years, 2 or 3 in a row, like we're going to end up having, with an offense that looks unbelievable, that could keep you in games, that could win you games. And even if the defense struggles in the beginning of the season, to get themselves acclimated to Anthony Weaver's defense until they get fully healthy and bring a Chubb in and Phillips is fully healthy to come in there. Good luck outscoring this team if Mike McDaniel doesn't push the brakes and just keeps that gas rolling all game long. They're going to be shootouts. This could be beginning couple games of the season. I'm only saying 2 or 3, maybe 4. This could be old Dan Marino days where you got to win those games 42, 40. You got to put up 40 points to beat this Dolphins team. At least it would be exciting. It'd be nerve-wracking and I'd bite all my nails off, but at least it would be exciting for the first month of the season. So.
Got to tell you, Zach, the 90s, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, that was movie. That was movie time for me. Sundays, whenever there was prime time, when I got a chance to see him. But that was a teenager and a young 20s me. I'm a lot older, and I can't have that anxiety and stress. I really would love to see the defense dominate as well, but you're right. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think to see 35-27, 41-33, that's where we live right now until Weaver, and this is a good thing, figures it out. And when I say figures it out, I'm seeing this beautiful exotic system where there's 3 safeties, couple of linebackers who are jacks, jokers, you know what I'm saying? So who are these guys? And we're going to talk about that. Listen, folks out there, I really appreciate it. This is, very, very grateful. 484 live folks out there. We impromptu'd this, but Michael Leva said, listen, you and Zach, you want to do a show? I'm like, yeah, let's do a lunchtime gig. And thank you for spending half hour, an hour. That's what we'll do. We'll go in the lunch hour mode. So let's keep this going here, and we'll get to some more questions. We'll stick with the offense for a couple more seconds. Tap for life. Hold on, my dude. We're going to get to you. I love it. We're going to get to you. But let's finish off the offense right now. It's the running back room. It is so amazing to see what Raheem Mostert did last year as a 30-plus to break the record, the touchdown king. And now he has kind of a running mate, literally in Devontae Chan. And you draft in a trade Jaylen Wright, who I think could be the next Mostert. So really what we saw last year in a couple of years could be the same thing, different player with Achane still doing his thing. And then you got Chris Brooks, you got Jeff Wilson, you got Savon Ahmed. And unfortunately, I don't know that we're naming all these names as an active 53-man rostered player in a couple of weeks. Can I put you on the spot and ask you who the odd man out is?
Well, I almost would have said at this point, because you have to look at all the running backs. You have to look at all of them and what they do right, what they do great. Mostert, obviously, shoo-in. Achane, shoo-in. Jaylen Wright, shoo-in. He's making the team. I think Chris Brooks is a shoo-in to make this team. I think you need that big, hefty back just in case. And we're never, ever – listen, folks, and I want to praise this guy, and I do on the round tables and with all the guys on DolphinsTalk.com all the time whenever this gets brought up. I don't think Lusaka Polite's walking through that door, folks, okay? On the 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1s where he was like 14 for 14 one year, and it was money every time he came in the game for them. If Chris Brooks can give you something like that, this is a guy you're going to keep on the roster. And one of those guys at the end of that list, Ahmed, Jeff Wilson Jr., probably going to get cut because of it, but you need that. How many times last year on like a 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, even going down to a 4th and 1, where you're like, yeah, we just need our bruiser to come in there. And they never had that trust in Brooks like they did once in a blue moon. I need to see that more. I think Brooks has a good camp, doesn't get hurt, knock on wood again, because that's what I'm going to say for everybody at this point, because that's what I'm always afraid of during training camp. I think Brooks makes the team. I think you're going to – that's your 4 right there. And then you have to look and see who fits the system a little bit more at the end. I think Ahmed or Jeff Wilson Jr. is going to be on the cutting board. I don't know who it's going to be, but it's going to be one of those two. Money-wise, I'd have to look up and see what the savings is on both those guys. You'd know better than me at this point. But I think it was yesterday in a roundtable when we were talking about if someone would offer a late-round pick for one of those guys, you take it in a second. You got to look around these other 31 teams around the league, see who's banged up and bruised in that running back spot. Maybe Chris Grier calls him and says, I got a whole bunch of these guys. You want to throw me a 6, a 7? I'll give you one of these guys at the back end here, and I'll take it to get another possible offensive lineman in the draft next year to bolster that crew. I think it's going to end up happening. But what a great problem to have that you got 5, 6, 7 guys in that spot, and you're going to have to cut or get rid of a good player that probably is a 2 or 3 on another team, depending on injuries. Great problem to have, but I think Jeff Wilson Jr. and Ahmed are going to be one of those guys that it's going to be one of these things where Chris Grier puts his hand over his eyes, goes like this, and it's Wilson. Sorry, it's Savant. So we'll see. But young guys, interesting guys to watch, like you said. I can't wait to see Jaylen Wright in there, just to see the potential of him. And I can't wait to see what he looks like at this point next year after sitting behind Mostert, who I think is a great leader, a great team player, and a great person in that room to learn from. And Achane also to see how he develops and if he can play a full season without getting banged up and injured and to see what happens. But I feel like about a year from now, maybe a year and change from now, you're going to see Achane, you're going to see Jaylen Wright, and you're going to see the future running backs for this team. And no offense to Mostert, because he has been amazing, like you said. No one's had a better season than him last year. What a great year to watch as a Dolphins fan. And for all the teams that have cut him in the past and gotten rid of him in the past, seeing him break every basic Miami Dolphin running back record where there's been a bunch of really good running backs down here over the last 50 years. It's fun, but I think Mostert's got another really good season in him, and then it's going to be done. Then the young guys are going to take care. But to answer that question, and I did before, it's Wilson or Savant, who unfortunately I think is going to take the cut.
I completely agree. And, Jeff Wilson and Brooks, one of those guys, I'd like to hope and think that they could be that short yardage specialist. Really, right. I've mentioned this stat on a couple of, shows and podcasts, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, when you only rush 15 times last year, all season long, the lowest. Yeah,
you had that
league,
number. Right.
That's the number. I mean, that's number
right.
15 rushes on 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1 all year. And that doesn't mean that they're necessarily not picking up first downs all the time. Then they're doing it with their receivers, sure. But when it's cold, when you're on the road, you can't hear the crowd. The defense is barking. They're audibling. They're switching. When you just need to move 4 feet, that's where we're at, folks. It's not an indictment on the running backs as much as it is confidence in the gap lineman, the middle lineman that could push an interior trench just ahead enough to just move the chains. 4 more minutes, 7 more minutes, 9 more minutes of a drive could end the game instead of sending one into overtime and maybe winning it. That's what it takes. So I think we cover the offense adequately. The defense, less concerning. We could agree with that.
Right. I think so too. You know what? Less concerning because they've got so many good players at so many different positions. And then obviously when the two injured stars come back, it'll be a much different look for the front part of this defense. It's amazing too, because for so many years, it was like, all right, well, they have a good front seven, but their DBs aren't great. Oh, they have great DBs, but the front seven needs a little bit of work. What are you going to do with the linebacker core? I think they're kind of okay to really, not I don't say really good. That's not fair. Okay to good at every position on defense. Obviously, in the middle of the defensive line, you don't know what you necessarily have yet because you had Wilkins there with Sealer last year, and the two of them were just a dynamic duo. They were not only fun to watch to see how they interacted with each other, and then, of course, with Hard Knocks seeing them, but just fun because you knew you weren't worried about a team coming in here and running for 180 yards on this team. Ain't going to happen. These two guys are going to stuff it up. And you drop back to pass. Good luck with Phillips. Good luck with Van Ginkel. Good luck with Bradley Chubb rushing that quarterback last year. I think they're going to be okay. I think they have such a weird grouping in that middle that someone's going to stand out a little bit. And I do think a crazy good signing in the offseason for this team. I know the dude's like 600 years old, and Calais Campbell is an old guy. I think him coming in here, he's not done. He's not Mario Williams coming in here for a 2-year, $20 million deal, just collecting checks. I like to call it the 401k program, that a lot of guys come down here and they got a year left in the tank, maybe. And maybe you would have seen that from Shaq Barrett, which I'm glad it happened before all this, because imagine we're in week 3 and he's just done. Like he just doesn't want to play anymore. Right. We would be so much more upset at that point. Yeah, it wasn't easy listening and finding out about him kind of retiring at that point or leaving the team a couple of weeks back. I sure as heck would have rather that happen than somewhere in the middle of the season where you didn't go and try to get someone else to fill in or had a capable fill in at this point. The fact that we're hearing such good things, when I hear some of the reporters give praise to a guy like Chop Robinson about how his burst off the line.
Seen it.
You were there. You've seen it. Anyone that's been to camp, if you watch Chop and spent 5 minutes watching him, it's unbelievable. The guy looks like, if he didn't have a number on his back and you didn't know that was a rookie, you would think that that wasn't a rookie. That's amazing news to hear, because one of the premier positions, we always joke about it on the roundtable. Mike always brings it up. Jason always brings it up. Dudley brings it up. Premier positions, that's all Chris Grier likes to draft in the first round. And if he hit on this one and Chop Robinson, good for him, because you can never have enough of those good players around. And maybe at that point, it's a 2-year plan for Bradley Chubb with Chop Robinson, where Bradley Chubb's here, and then maybe he's not here in a year or two because Chop Robinson can take that spot. Or you just keep the depth at a premium position and rotate guys in and out, and you always have dudes that can run after that quarterback. It's a good problem to have, an amazing thing to hear about Chop Robinson, about how he's having a pretty good camp. Looks like he's got great burst. Sarney, like I said, has seen him. I'm excited about this defensive front because there's so many unknowns about it. We don't know much about Kamara and what he can bring to the table, and we'll see about him. I know they're young guys, but guess what? Sometimes young guys come in here and dominate. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do. What if Chris Grier, for all the grief I've given him over the last 10 years, brings in Kamara and Chop Robinson, and that's a future at that position with a Jaylen Phillips also there in the background? If that is the case, this defensive front is going to be a lot better than we think. But they're young. You got to give them time. You got Chop Robinson, who's a baby, and you got Calais Campbell, who's the grandpa. And they're going to be right next to each other probably at certain times, and we'll see how that all figures out. But if any of these young guys are smart on the defensive line, I would be hanging around Calais Campbell, watching him work out, watching him eat, watching him watch tape, spending as much time as possible around him. When you're a star like that for as many years as he's been in the league, and he can play basically any position on that defensive front if they needed him to, outside of being a speed rusher because the dude's almost 40 years old. I mean, I want to see what Weaver does with the young guys and see how much trust he's got in them come week 1. Preseason-wise, let those dudes play as much as they want without being injured or getting hurt. Of course, that always comes. It's my caveat with everything I say at this point, as long as they don't get injured. But I'm not as concerned as I think we all were when Wilkins left and you didn't know what to do at that point. I think they've gotten a little bit kind of sneaky signings and sneaky draft picks that are going to come in and fill those voids pretty quickly. And to be honest, when you have a secondary like it looks like the Dolphins have right now, you could have a little bit of a hole up front and be able to catch up in the back with those guys. I can't wait to see the 3 safety setup when you got all those guys out there. I can't wait to see in a game what Jalen Ramsey does. It's going to be exciting. It's a fun time of the year because they've got a major chance, and they still have a really good chance to win this AFC and be a big superstar team in the AFC. Of course, player personnel is very important, but I'm excited to see what will happen.
I'm very excited about the safety scenarios. I really can't wait to see because let's call Jalen Ramsey a defensive back, meaning he can handle safety. Let's call Nick Needham a defensive back. He can handle safety. Elijah Campbell. Cam Smith is a cornerback who I'm intrigued with where he plays as a corner. Is he going to back up Cater? Is he going to back up, Ramsey as a corner? So when Ramsey does go somewhere else, who's going to take the boundary? Is it, here we go. Here's a segue. Ethan Bonner, Friday night. This guy, he is one of the feisty fighters in practice and, not condoning fighting in practice. This defense needs to shed a soft mentality. You heard even free agents say it. You've seen it on social media. These guys have come together as a group, I think, since one defensive coordinator has left and another one has come in. So if they're going to play maybe angry on the field, not be angry off the field after the game, not loving where they played or how they got their, usage or whatever, let them love what they do. And if you have a problem with it, hit them harder. Hold them a little bit before you get away with it. Do something a little bit feisty. I like Ethan Bonner. He needs to solidify his spot on the roster, which I think he's already done. But I think he needs like I said, he needs to solidify it. He needs to not get burned. I mean, if he's holding his own against Tyreek Hill. So basically, you got a kid who's a backup cornerback going up against the best player in the league every day. And he's holding his own.
No, and let me put this in a good analogy for you. Ethan Bonner's in a 12-round championship fight, and through 3 or 4 rounds, he is overwhelming the other guy. And as long as he doesn't get knocked out or do something bad for the next 8 rounds, probably going to win this fight. And I think that's where he is in preseason right now, where he has, before the first preseason game, made such an impact because, like you said, when you have to line up every day against Waddle, against Tyreek, against that offense, you're going to get better. Whether you like it or not, whether Bonner likes it or not, he's going to become a better player that way. And another team, if this Dolphins team doesn't keep him, will probably pick him up in a second because of what he's went through during camp. I think as long as he doesn't have a horrific game Friday night or have a couple really bad days in camp coming up after that where he really makes major mistakes. I mean, major mistakes, not minor ones you could, brush off or gets injured. I think you're right. And I think he's on the 53. I think he's made it. And it's only through like a week of camp. It's impressive. And if that's the case, and you found a kind of diamond in the rough a little bit that could every day come in there and compete, you've done a great job, Chris Grier, with that kid, bringing him in and having him be here. And I have ripped Chris Grier over the years for just about everything he's done, including called for his firing after the second and third year for Tua, because I thought this was a major mistake, what's happening with the team, the coaches, Fitzpatrick, the whole deal, and wasting a fifth overall pick. I brought it back. I've apologized a couple times, not all the time, not for everything, but I brought it back. This would be one of those where I would pat him on the back and say, pretty good eye there. I don't know which scout's the one who got him, but pretty good eye there. And whoever it was probably deserves a raise at this point because they found a nice guy.
They tend to, the administration, the scouts, the team, tend to find that defensive back as an undrafted free agent. So you had Bonner, you had Cater Kohu, you had Nick Needham. Now, Nick Needham is intriguing from a preseason standpoint because, I think that enough has been shown, let's say particularly in the slot in which he's backing up Cater Kohu on the depth chart right now. He could play the boundary. He could play that slot. He, of course, could now be transitioned to, some safety usage as well. So if they use him a little bit in preseason, it wouldn't shock me to kind of unnecessarily need to have to prove himself for a new defensive coordinator. So where they play him will be interesting. Now, here's a little comparison and a swing back to Channing Crowder. I remember when he was on one of the Fish Tank episodes and he was going through just one of his stories about on-field. it always stuck out to me. He's like, I was Mike 1, Sam 1, Will 3. Like, Mike Will, he was naming all the different linebackers, different numbers. So he was always on every rep learning different things. And I feel like that's like Needham in the defensive backfield.
Right.
He's always, all right, great. Slot 2, boundary 3, safety 4, whatever the numbers are. He could be a very intriguing Ramsey light in terms of usage. So that said, talk 2 more undrafted free agents. Storm Duck, who not only has the name of the century in South Florida, where weather can change on a dime, Jason Maitre is doing very well, supposedly, as well down there. I didn't get a great look at Jason as I was down there. Saw Storm do a couple of nice things. Didn't have a terrific look. But what are you hearing down there from the 2 undrafted corners?
Well, I think more, and I think I'm with you on the Storm. For Storm Duck, I think that it's one of these positions where they're so, I don't want to say they're so deep in the position, but they kind of are at that position where they're not going to be able to kind of hide him. You know what I mean? From another team that's looking for a guy, if God forbid he's by that 6 spot, that 5 spot, that maybe lower than that because they're deep there. So they got to cross-train him, I think. I think they got to cross-train a bunch of these guys at the bottom of their list. And I don't mean bottom of the list like, oh, they're going to get cut, but because you're top-heavy a little bit when you talk about having Holland and having Jaylen Ramsey and having Fuller and making – they're going to be playing all over the place. Cross-train the Bonner kid. Cross-train Storm Duck and see what can happen. Maybe they can play safety in a game if you need them to. Maybe they can play nickel. Maybe somebody gets hurt, God forbid. You got to put him in man-on-man next to Ramsey or next to Fuller if Ramsey's out of game. I'd cross-train all these guys you think can play multiple positions like a Nick Needham and just find a spot maybe that week that's best for them. That'd be the best thing for all these guys anyway. It's one thing I saw at the University of Miami. They bring in 5-star left tackles from around the country, and the next thing you know, he's playing right guard. Next thing you know, he's playing center. And they're cross-training him, so just in case this guy – there's been tight ends, including a Warren Sapp who came in a tight end who ended up being one of the best defensive tackles of all time. They cross-train these guys. Why not do that with – I know Jaylen Ramsey is a number 1 man-to-man cover corner. I get it. He can play other positions too. That doesn't mean you necessarily need to cross-train him, but a Needham, a Bonner, one of these guys at the end, cross-train them and see what can happen so they can make some waves on this team and see where they could fit. I'm hearing more about Duck than anyone else, and you know what? I just have a feeling if he has a good camp and stays healthy, there's my caveat again, that he could be one of those guys that we're looking at, 51, 52, 53. Do we keep him? Do we keep an extra linebacker? Do we keep the extra tight end here? What do we do? And then you look at premium positions. And if he could play cornerback, if he could play safety, if he could play all over the place back there, he's going to be a guy you have to keep on the team, I think. But it just all depends on where that because we're talking about 4 or 5 spots at the end of the roster. We're not talking about 12 or 13 open, spots all over.
It's a good thing.
Which is a great thing. A couple of years back when they wwere remodeling this team, I think you went into camp one year with literally 20 guys that had spots and 33 positions open for the taking. Like, maybe that number's a little high, but like kind of close to that. I don't think that's the case, which is a good thing for most good teams don't have 12 spots open. They have 4 or 5 spots at the end of the roster. Young guys, rookies, special teams. What can we do here and there? Storm Duck can make this team, I think. But I don't think he's going to be the kind of guy where they're like, he's like 54. Let's put him on the practice squad. Because then I think another team looks at tape on him and says he could be our backup nickel. He could be our backup free safety. He can maybe start here in this position for us. So I think they got to be careful with Storm more than anyone else. But I'm hearing more about him than just about any of the other young guys because obviously 1, the name, and 2, he's out there making some plays.
You make a great point about who you can protect going down practice squad, who you worry about another team plucking.
Right.
No pun intended if it's Duck, but
Duck. That's good.
Okay. Moving on. That's really, I think we covered everything except I'd be remiss to not mention, and thank you for Cap for Life for jogging the memory, because we're going to talk about, I guess, like the darling of camp, Quentin Bell, and he's now edge 1 on the depth chart. Now, of course, Jaylen, Phillips, Bradley, Chubb, active PUP, not knowing exactly when they're coming back.
Right.
Fun story. He got a Super Bowl ring with the Bucs, but he's only had like 5 career tackles, team limited snap counts, special teams too. What are your thoughts about Bell? How much is his presence and story kind of reverberating around South Florida?
It's if it's not Bonner, people are talking about it's Quentin Bell, and Storm Duck's probably third on that list. If those are the 3 guys, the outside guys that you want to know more about, because there's always those guys at camp every single year. Bell's got a great shot to not only make this team, but to be productive early in the season. Because if he's pretty good and out there, not during the preseason, but I'm talking game 1, comes out there and shows that he could hold his own, I think it's going to make this transition a lot easier for them to look back at Bradley Chubb and say, are you at 75%, 80%, 85%? Where are you? You're at 75? Let's wait a couple more weeks. Let's get you back for the run at the end of the season that you weren't here for last year, that we desperately needed you for, because this Bell kid's playing pretty good. Chop's playing pretty good. Jaylen Phillips, we worked back into the rotation, and he's Jaylen Phillips. So once he's back to 100%, we're not really worried at this point. What a great position to be in as an edge rusher, outside linebacker for this team right now, because of the reps you're going to get with the 1s and 2s that normally you would never get. If you think about it, if Phillips and Chubb were healthy right now, and Chop Robinson was the draft pick, which he probably wouldn't have been if those 2 guys weren't injured, but let's just say all those guys were there, we would not be talking about Quentin Bell. We'd be talking about how good the defensive front looks, and the who's gonna fill in for Wilkins. Can Calais be that guy? Bell's got a shot to make the team. We'll see. I think at this point, if Bell has a decent to productive next week at camp, another guy like Bonner, who has solidified one of those final 6 or 7 spots on the team, and you're not worried about him coming in there and playing week 1 in Anthony Weaver's defense. It's a coup to have 2 guys like that, like Bonner and Bell, who are having good camps, that the defensive coaches and Anthony Weaver look at and say, man, if somebody gets hurt, we can plug that guy in right away, game 1, game 2, whatever the case may be. Bell is, yes, the darling of the camp, and Bonner's right behind him at this point. And that's a good thing to have, especially at those 2 prime positions. Better off we're talking about that than a 6th or 7th tight end that's having a really good camp. I'd rather be talking about premium position guys that are showing off, especially when guys are injured. And this is a good thing for the Dolphins team.
We didn't talk specifically about the tight ends, but, the defense, with Weaver, it's a relative clean slate, which is good,
right.
So I love that. And I really can't wait to see, hey, let's face it, guys 50 to the rest, all the way down. Guys 47 down to the rest. Right. See what they could do. Of course, a guy like a River Craycraft could see a series, take him out, and then you're looking at the Braylon Sanders show, Willie Snead getting some action, and I know they signed another, let's do another Caneswear prop, Mike Harley, another Hurricane. They brought in.
Right.
So, and of course, Calais Campbell, the great Hurricane, maybe a Hall of Famer joining them one day.
I would think that Calais Campbell at this point plays 1 year here with the Dolphins, gets to the playoffs, wins a game, and I don't even think it matters. He could have retired a month ago, and I think that he is going to be a Hall of Famer. First ballot guy, I don't know, but when you're as good as a player as he is, and you're the Walter Payton Man of the Year,
yep,
and you're a guy that every single person that you've come in contact with in the NFL says what a great dude this guy is, what a great mentor, and honestly, what a great player he is, especially at 38 also. I think the NFL is waiting for him to call it a career, and then we're going to have the countdown to will he gets at the end, the Hall of Fame at this point. Another Hurricane in the Hall of Fame. Seems like every year we get another one of these guys in the Hall of Fame at this point.
And what a segue to say that I'm actually rocking my anniversary. It's the anniversary of Zach Thomas going into the Hall of Fame. So
a great day for all Dolphin fans.
Amazing day. And, recently, and a big time shout out to Tim Bowens, who's going into the Ring of Honor. It was announced to him by Zach Thomas just the other day. And it was awesome for folks of a certain age. Zach, us growing up with Tim Bowens, helping that defense just do everything that they needed to do. He was a badass. That's right from Zach himself. Awesome celebration. I think it's going to be at that fan weekend. I think Arizona, if I'm not mistaken, the Cardinals game. So shout out to Timbo over there. And listen, thanks for everybody watching. However many of you are, who cares? It's an amazing experience in this community. Thank you to Michael Leva at Dolphins Talk for everything that you do and allow us to do. Zach, where can everybody find you? I know you are a busy man yourself.
Oh, well, I mean, Krantz's Corner, if you just search Krantz's Corner, go to WQAM.com or just go into a Google search and put Krantz's Corner. Hopefully my pretty face comes up. Football season is back. We are all over the place for the Miami Hurricanes and Miami Dolphins down here in South Florida. But one of my favorite times of the week, the Dolphins Roundtable. Sarney's been a part of it forever. Michael Leva's been a part of it forever. Douglas Durong's been a part of it forever. I love doing that. I love talking to the Dolphins community. I think it's a lot of fun. I think that's one of the best things about my kind of transition from everyday radio to the digital side of things. And yeah, I still miss radio. Still love, covering the Dolphins with Joe Rose every single day, being at camp every morning during camp, bright and early before even the groundskeepers get there. But it is nice sleeping in once in a while also till about 6 or 7 in the morning and not having to deal with that. But Krantz's Corner, WQAM.com, and honestly, here at DolphinsTalk.com. Whenever I can come on with Jason, whenever I come on with Mike and do stuff, I love doing it with this, and I love the Dolphins community. It's a really fun community to be around right now.
It's always a pleasure chopping it up with you, Zach. And chopping it up, we'll do some deli, next week. We're doing deli now. Hopefully we'll get a sandwich for you too, Zach. And for all you out there, thank you so much. Fins up to you, and let's watch a fun game. Finally, tomorrow we got some action. Enjoy, everybody. Have a good day.